Okay. Result of the meeting with the vested interests. I felt terrified of the danger that magic contracts had introduced. Lutz and I just wanted job security. We didn't want to hurt anyone. I went home with Lutz trembling in fear. My stomach was churning as if I had swallowed a whole boat that was floating around. You don't gotta worry so much. Ben will do something. I nodded at Lutz, but I just couldn't stop thinking about how someone I didn't know might soon be hurt or worse because of me. I was so worried. My stomach ached. What was I afraid of? Forcing people I didn't know to get involved in my business and hurting them as a result. I really wanted to just shut myself inside my home, but Lutz basically forced me outside each day, saying that he had no idea what I would do if left alone. I hated that we could only wait for Benno's contact while going to the forest and making paper. But in the end, even after several days passed, Benno didn't say anything to us. He never mentioned anyone dying a suspicious death. Everything was normal. Too normal. Several more days passed, and my fear turned into distrust towards Benno. Would the contract magic really kill someone? Maybe he was just exaggerating. I thought back to exactly what Benno had said to find any clues. Even his tone and expression might have hinted at something. You know, isn't it a little weird? What is? Lutz frowned at me while angling the cicada to make Vorum paper. I turned to look at him after putting a fresh paper onto the drying bed. That contract magic would affect people who don't know the contract in question exists. That's not weird. It's magic. What do you expect? Replied Lutz casually as he put his finished paper on the draining bed on top of mine. I pursed my lips while scooping up water and shaking it. I expected it to make sense somehow. It'd be weird if it didn't. I mean, think about it. What if someone signed a magic contract about a product that's already on the market? People all over would break it. And what if someone signs a magic contract in a city far away from ours? We'd have no idea. I kept pondering this while shaking the cicada. If contract magic was used to enforce the equivalent of patent rights, there was probably a patent officer or something that managed them. Someone had to inform the public what magic contracts were in effect. It'd be too dangerous otherwise. I think contract magic has a bunch of conditions and a limited range that we don't know about. And anyway, don't you think magic this dangerous would be restricted a little more? Alright, I can tell you're building up to something. What are you nervous about? Said Lutz, which made me reflexively stop shaking the cicada. He picked it up from the side and continued for me. You always talk faster when you're trying to hide how you feel. Lutz jerked his head, urging me to spit it out. I couldn't hide anything from him. I'm scared of hurting people we don't know with our magic contract. I want to think that Benno was joking or lying. Nobody's been hurt yet, right? Maybe he was just trying to scare us? I want to think he was just trying to scare us. It'd be nice if he was just joking, but why would he do that? What would he gain from tricking us? I mean, he's tricked us a lot already. I get the feeling that he's hiding something from us again to test us or something. I was about to say that he probably had some secret reason for distancing us from him when suddenly I heard a familiar voice from behind us. Wow, I didn't know you had so little trust in Benno, mine. Wow, Otto. Lutz and I, surprised that someone else was in the storage building, spun around. There we saw a grinning Otto in his normal clothes, raising both a hand and an eyebrow. Mr. Otto, why are you here? Why else would I be here but to deliver a message from Benno? Duh. Benno had indeed said that he would contact us through Otto, but I had expected him to wave us down on our way through the gate. I never thought for a second he would come visit us in the storage building. Seems like everything's over. His short message didn't tell me anything. I lurched towards Otto, desperate for any information that would calm my aching stomach. What's over? How did it go? Well, it sure sounded like a big deal. He really broke his back making things work. What do you mean by that? What happened? Otto just shrugged, not giving me any hard answers. I had no idea if he actually didn't know, if he was just pretending not to know. Benno didn't tell you anything? He told us some stuff, but not much. He said that it would be really bad if people who didn't know about our magic contracts started making paper on their own. Then he said that we shouldn't go into his store until he was finished dealing with the Parchment Guild. Partially to keep the manufacturing process for paper safe. I summarized what Benno had said and Otto stroked his chin. Sounds like he told you the bare minimum at least. Did anybody get hurt from the contract magic? That's what I'm really worried about. You two hid so the process wouldn't get out, right? Nobody's been hurt. Everything else you should hear from Benno. Want to go together once you finish your work here? Okay. The weight on my chest was lifted by his confirmation that nobody had been hurt. Feeling lighter than I had in days, I got back to rocking the cicada. Shaking that thing makes paper. What even is it? That's a secret. Looks like there's some gooey stuff inside. What's it made of? That's a secret. Otto watched us, full of curiosity and questions, but I just kept working while giving any answers. We're on the same side here, Mind. You can tell me. Benno will get mad if I tell anyone. Right, Lutz? I directed the question to Lutz and he shrugged with a grin. He gets mad at Mind for not thinking before she talks all the time. Keeping quiet's the best call for her. You tell people this kind of thing without thinking? I can picture Benno now so mad his veins are bulging. It's less that he gets so mad his veins bulge and more than he just gets really exasperated. We cleaned up our tools and headed to Benno's with Otto. By the time we got out of the alleyway and onto the main road, Otto was looking down at me while rubbing his temples. Hey, Mind, do you always walk this slow? Yes. I gotta hand it to you, Lutz. You're a better man than me. I couldn't take this. Which means, up you go. Ah! Otto saying that he couldn't take my slow speed, hefted me up into his arms. He then power walked forward. I got the feeling that lately Benno and Mark had been carrying me around everywhere too. It seems like my walking speed was so slow that adults felt compelled to pick me up. Hello, girl, if you're walking so slow, adults aren't gonna have patience to deal with that. We arrived at Benno's store and Mark came out to greet us. Hello, Mine and Lutz. Thank you for your help, Otto, said Mark, lowering his head in thanks. No biggie, this was pretty fun. Is Benno there? Replied Otto casually as he walked inside. He held me up with one arm and used his other hand to open the door to Benno's office. Benno, your goddess of water has arrived. Huh? The moment Otto walked into the room and said whatever that weird comment was, Benno glared at him with such a forceful gaze that I could feel murderous intent ready. Is that supposed to be a hint? Did he hint at something? Or him hinting that maybe... Oh, it's the story of the gods. I can't remember exactly. Could somebody remind me of it real quick? Because I don't think I'm going to be able to get to that before this recording's done. But I'm assuming that he was implying that mine was his love interest. And I'm like, no. Yeah, that explains the glaring. Feel murderous intent rating from him. Since he was looking in my general direction, I got hit with the gaze myself and jerked in fear. Yeah. Both Lutz and mine are scared shitless. Shut it, Otto. Want me to force Karina to divorce you? Oh. Yeah. You better shut your mouth, Otto. It seemed that Benno had the authority to make Karina divorce Otto since he was the patriarch of the family. He had said that Otto was basically his son-in-law, so Benno was indeed the family head. The force of Benno's glare and the low tone of his voice made it clear he was serious, and I wasn't the only one who noticed that. Otto hurriedly covered for himself, not wanting to lose the pillar of support that kept him going in life. Whoa, I'm just kidding. It was just a little joke. Jokes that aren't funny aren't jokes. Benno grabbed Otto's head and squeezed it with a grim expression that made it hard to tell whether he was playing around or not. I wish he would stop. Otto was about to drop me. Mr. Benno, are you in a bad mood right now? I ventured to ask. Yeah, 'cause of this guy, Benno replied with a glare, but Otto just casually set me down. You know, Benno, these kids don't trust you too much. Oh my god! He is telling you. 9, you're getting called out here. I heard mine complaining a lot about you. He's tricking us again. I think he's hiding something. Maybe this is another test. I felt like I understood why Benno was so mad. Otto had definitely said something he shouldn't have. There was no doubt that he was intentionally trying to get us mad. Otto, you didn't have to say that. Thinking that Otto's comment would make Benno's mood worse, I peered up at him, but Benno didn't look mad at all. He just looked at me inside of what felt like exhaustion. Mind, do you have a sharp mind? Or are you just distrustful? Do you have a bad personality? I went out of my way to help you avoid this mess and you just couldn't be happy about it? But hey, interjected Otto, a good merchant never takes someone's word up front, yeah? She was right to doubt you and try to figure out the truth by reading between the lines of what you said and did. He gave me a thumbs up with a grin. Well, whatever. I'll answer your questions. Sit. I sat at the usual table and the first thing I asked was what had been bothering me this whole time. Does contract magic really affect people uninvolved with the contract? Yeah, depending on the contents of the contract. Our contract could potentially affect other people. Didn't I explain that to you? He had indeed, but not in a way that convinced me. But couldn't you hurt a lot of people by making a magic contract about a really common product or manufacturing technique? We have no idea what kind of contracts are being signed in faraway cities, so... Is there some kind of condition for the contract to activate? Or maybe they have a limited range of effect? Also, is there like a building that manages magic contracts? Benno's eyes widened as I listed out my thoughts. Then he nodded, yeah, generally magic contracts only work in the city they were signed in. Small-time magic used inside cities doesn't penetrate the magic barrier built into the outer walls surrounding them. Yeah, apparently there's a magic barrier. Magic barrier? What? My heart thumped at the fantasy-sounding term, and I instinctively leaned forward, but Benno just glared at me. A city's magic barrier is built into its foundation, but that doesn't matter right now. Unless you don't have any more questions about what happened, that is... Wait, no, I do. If contract magic actually can affect people who don't know about the contracts, isn't it super dangerous? I think it's weird that it's used so frivolously. It's not really used frivolously. It's not very often I'm guessing they use it. Benno, displeased, raised an eyebrow and glared at me. Contract magic isn't used frivolously. The magic tools necessary to perform it are given only to certain recognized merchants, and they're so expensive your jaw would drop if you heard the price. Not to mention that, just like you thought, magic contracts that could have an effect on others must be reported to the lord of the region, the Archduke. I'm the one who'd be punished if I didn't report it and people got hurt. Wait, does that mean... The second I start to wonder if Benno had forgotten to report our contract and began panicking because people might have gotten hurt because of that, he thumped me on the forehead. Ugh! Don't get any stupid ideas. I already reported it to him. He guessed my thoughts before I said them. I held my forehead and groaned. Benno let out a and his lips curved into a triumphant grin. When I reported it to him, I was told to report it to the Merchant's Guild since it was a magic contract pertaining to a new product. Which means you actually reported it to the Merchant's Guild, too. Naturally, I reported the contract to the guild and recorded it. While I was at it, I got permission to start a new guild. What? Permission to start a new guild? What's he planning? Is he trying to do something he really shouldn't do just to get more money? His unexpected revelation made my eyes open wide and my head tilt. Seeing that, Benno puffed out his chest of pride and an annoyingly smug look on his face. Plant paper's gonna turn into a massive industry, you know, so I decided to make a plant paper guild in the image of the Parchment Guild and spread the business to other cities too. That's the first I'm hearing of this. I flinched, and Benno nodded like I had just said something obvious. That's because this is the first time I'm mentioning it. Hold on a second. Does this mean you're picking a head-on fight with the vested interests? I thought you were going to have a talk and end this peacefully. No, you wanted to end it peacefully. He was going head-on into this fight. I had no idea why he was being so forceful about this. Benno's methods involved nothing even resembling compromise or consideration for others. It's not my fault things ended up like this. Blame the geezer. Aren't you avoiding responsibility here? I said, which made Benno glare at me and Otto burst into laughter next to him. I didn't know why it was so funny, so we just glared at him and waited for Benno to answer. I'm not avoiding responsibility. I went to the Merchant's Guild to register the magic contract and start the guild, but got rejected since we signed the contract before there was a real-life prototype. I had to go back after you finished the first finds. Ah. But the guildmaster didn't like the idea of me starting a new guild, so he dragged things out. Ultimately, didn't finish processing my report by the end of the whole season. Speaking of which, the guildmaster had blocked our temporary registrations, too. He eventually caved in and reluctantly approved it for the hairpins, but I remember how stubborn he had been. I remember how he did something like that with our temporary registrations. Can he just reject applications for personal reasons? Naturally, he comes up with an excuse for what he does. He blocked our temporary registration because we weren't related, and this time he blocked the plant paper guild because there's already existed a guild for paper, and he didn't see a need for a second one, said Benno, looking extremely displeased. It's used for the same purpose, but it's made differently and made from different products. So, it's not technically the same thing. Completely. I thought back to how he and the guildmaster had acted in the meeting back then. It was clear they basically hated one another and were doing everything they could to one-up each other. I can imagine how things went down. I submitted my registration in autumn and sold paper in the spring without even thinking he wouldn't have processed it by then. I should have been more careful, but can you really say I'm avoiding responsibility here? Benno glared at me and I hurriedly shook my head. I think it's the Merchant's Guild's fault for being slow. Right? The Parchment Guild complained because I sold paper that hadn't been registered. That geezer ignored what he had done and gave them all his support like the scum he is. It seemed that Benno's true foe hadn't been the vested interest, it had been the guildmaster. Benno went on. Archduke Ehrenfest told me to register with the Merchant's Guild. What do you think would happen if people got hurt because the magic contract's registration hadn't been completed? Being told to do something and then not doing it would look pretty bad, so I would guess Benno would get punished pretty severely. I think the Archduke would get really mad at you. Yeah, he'd take the tools needed for magic contracts away from me. limit what trade I can do with nobles, and punish all those involved with the contract. That would be giving that geezer the perfect chance to hit me where it hurts. I couldn't let the method of producing paper get out until the registration was processed, no matter what. Considering his opponent was the guildmaster, I can understand why he was being so cautious. You can see why I didn't want you two getting involved in this struggle between adults. And really, you know the guildmaster, and he saved your life. So you would probably blabber about all sorts of secrets without thinking before you spoke. Do you really trust me that little? History repeats itself. Think about what you've done. I remember all the mistakes I had made in the guildmaster's home. Yeah, you did. And faltered. It was true that from Benno's perspective, I was a rogue element he couldn't predict. Distancing me from the problem was the safest bet. I understand what happened now. So was your meeting with the Parchment Guild a struggle? They weren't a big deal after a little prep work. The problem is just that dang geezer. The Guildmaster is the final boss, huh? I didn't expect that the vested interest would just be small fries to Benno. Back when I was making paper with an aching stomach, I hadn't expected any of this. As I thought about what I had learned, Otto, who had been listening up to this point without saying anything, spoke with a grin. He dragged me to that meeting, too. The Parchment Guild ended up agreeing to a compromise. A compromise? They agreed to allow different kinds of paper to be used for different things, said Benno, reminding me what I had suggested to him. I clapped my hands together. By cooperating, we could protect the parchment market to some degree, while mass-producing paper for all sorts of other purposes. It was a massive step toward my dream of making books. If paper spread enough and lowered in price, it would be that much easier to make books. Once Benno had workshops mass-producing paper, I could get all I needed for cheap. Now we need to think about ink and printing, I thought, but before I could get too far off track, Otto continued with an amused expression. So we were all like, who managed to change Benno's mind for the first time? Who made the unmovable rock budge? Rumor is Benno found... Oh, no, this again! Stop it! Dude! You're gonna make him want you to divorce his sister. Rumor is Benno finally found his own goddess of water. The tone of the conversation shifted from complex politics and into a more casual, joking mood, so let's join. What's the goddess of water? May I ask who the goddess of water is? Melting snow is a sign of spring. She's the goddess who brings us an end to long winter, said Otto, which made me snap back to reality. Right, I don't know any of the religious myths here, but they're so popular that the names of gods pop up in spring greetings. It's likely that religion is deeply intertwined with the lives of people here. The goddess of water is different from the goddess of spring in the spring greeting, right? Different? Well, it's more like the goddess of water, the goddess of sprouts, and all goddesses that have to do with spring are lumped into the goddess of spring. It's more accurately goddesses of spring, but people just say goddess most of the time. Neat. Maybe it was just me, but I was glad the world was polytheistic like it was used to. It would have been a lot harder for me to adjust to a world that demanded you worship one single god, given my Japanese background in Shintoism. I was a little less nervous about the baptism now. Neat? Is that it? Said Otto, surprised. Maybe it had been rude of me to just say neat in response to his explanation. I'm glad I know more about goddesses now. Thank you very much, and please tell me more if you can later. That's not what I meant. I called you Benno's. Want to get kicked out, Otto? Said Benno in a low voice, making Otto fidget. I feel like I caused an issue by not reading between the lines, but judging by the angry expression on Benno's face. Maybe not understanding was the smarter choice here. When ignorance is bliss, 'tis folly to be wise. Or rather, when ignorance is bliss, 'tis folly to be wise. Speaking of which, why did Mr. Otto go to the meeting anyway? I threw out a helping bone to Otto before Benno could start talking about divorce again. I successfully managed to shift Benno's attention. He turned to face me, and Otto signaled his thanks with a grateful look. I'm going to have him help run this store once the Plant Paper Guild gets going. What? Does that mean Mr. Otto's going to be a merchant again? Otto had given up his life as a merchant to marry Karina, but perhaps now he had a chance to return to doing what he loved. I thought that was great, but Benno lightly shook his head. Nah, Otto's still a soldier. I'm just going to work him to the bone on his time off. What? Isn't that, like, super mean? Girl, you not seen Benno. You not met Benno. I raised my voice in shock and saw Lutz nodding. The idea of Otto finishing a grueling day at the gate and then working as a merchant without any rest was just sad. Benno just snorted and grinned at Otto. He's just working to cover his rent for Karina's sake. Nothing odd about that at all, right, Otto? Pretty sure you're working me harder than the rent's worth. The two of them glared at each other with dark smiles. Les and I didn't fit in at all. Eventually, I got bored of their endless staring contest and tapped the table. Mr. Benno, could you please continue, please? What happened with the Guildmaster in the end? Benno looked away from Otto and faced me, then shrugged and gave a triumphant grin. The Parchment Guild agreed to the creation of the Plant Paper Guild thanks to the compromise, so he really had no choice but to approve my application. You should have seen the petulant look on his face. And who's the one who made sure he had no choice? Otto butted in with a joke, but he was right. Benno had played the political game and forced the Guildmaster's hand. I looked at Let's and Benno clicked his teeth. I got all the right paperwork ready, made peace with the Parchment Guild, and prevented anyone from getting hurt. The application was only delayed this long because the Merchants Guild was being negligent. Yeah, you're not wrong, but you didn't have to ask. If you're getting too old to read properly, maybe you should retire already. And honestly saying, hey, I'll do you a favor and take your place was going a bit too far, revealed Otto, making me gasp in shock. He dragged this out because you said those things? That's why he has it out for you. I bet he got really mad. He got so mad his face went red. Never knew faces could get that red, actually, said Otto casually, but that was information I didn't need to hear. Benno nodding and saying that it was indeed an impressive sight didn't help. Who cares how mad that geezer gets? I had to work twice as hard to get this finished because of him being a jerk. Well, considering what he tried to pull when you were younger and your dad died and all that? No! Heck no! The divide between Benno and the Guildmaster had become deeper and wider because of all this. Anyway, this time I made sure he finished the registration. Now I'm going to make a ton of paper and sell all of it. First comes settling on a workshop. Benno began talking about setting up a workshop to mass-produce paper now that the bureaucratic issues have been resolved. I'll start mass production once the summer baptism's over. Why is that? Asked Otto curiously. I did a detailed profit calculation and figured out I'd earn more if I waited for the baptism to end and for Let's to become my apprentice. I won't have to fund them anymore, and anyway, it'll take that long to settle on a workshop, make the tools, get the raw materials ready, and learn the manufacturing process. Let's and I had struggled a lot to secure our tools. Benno was definitely right when he said that preparing larger tools for mass production would be very time-consuming. Alright, with that said, it's time for you to spit out how to make paper so I can make informed decisions here. It seemed that Benno's real purpose in calling us here was to learn how to make paper. Let's not exchange looks and sighed. Tools and selecting a workshop. Benno had been all spit it out with total self-assurance, but I figured that this was a good opportunity to ask for an information fee, just like with the Rinsham. Observing him carefully, I began to speak. Since we won't be seeing any of the profit earned by the Plant Paper Guild, I would like to receive an What? Okay. An information fee for teaching you the manufacturing process of paper. Alright, sure. How much do you want? Benno grinned and tapped the table. To be honest, I had no idea what the proper price for this kind of information would be. How much are you willing to pay, Mr. Benno? Name a price, and I'll pay it. How much? Benno, knowing exactly how I was feeling, grinned and threw the ball in my court. The only frame of reference I had for information fees was the 3 small golds he paid for the Rinsham information. The fact that Benno went out of his way to make a guild for this paper made it clear he expected it to sell extraordinarily well for a very long time. I want twice as much as you paid me for the Rinsham information. Sure, come here. Dang, 6 small golds? Good lord, girl. Benno, he didn't even hesitate, too. He's like, sure, okay. As if he's paying you, what am I saying? He's probably paying you peanuts in exchange for all that, anyway. Benno took out his guild card and waved it in the air. He accepted my price with his grin, not faltering for a moment. Maybe I should have asked for more money. I just didn't understand how much the information was worth. Still uncertain, I took out my guild card and tapped it against Benno's. I fell into thought, groaning a little when Otto crossed his arms and looked at Benno. Even supposing you decided on how many tools to get, how big to make them, and so on after asking mine for details, shouldn't you still take the tools in the storage building and start making paper now as soon as possible, said Otto. I gasped at the idea. Those are property of the mine workshop. We wouldn't be able to make our own paper if he takes them. No. I mean, the storage building itself belongs to Benno, so... Buttered in Bloods. I pursed my lips, pouting, and looked at Benno. We would be in trouble if he took our tools away to use himself. And in any case, those tools weren't fit for mass production paper. Still, it's not right. The mine workshop tools aren't made for mass production. There we go. Benno raised an eyebrow confused, and I started to explain. Our tools are built with completing prototypes in mind, and they're smaller, lighter, and simplified so that we kids can use them. They aren't fit for mass production. There's also a lot of alternative tools we're using to avoid making you pay too much. Huh? Why are you holding back when he signed a contract to fund you? Shouldn't you take advantage of that and get all the best tools you can, said Otto, his tone making it clear he thought we were being stupid. But I hadn't even considered exploiting someone else's money for my own benefit. At that time, it was hard for me to get my hands on a single nail. My mind was focused entirely on minimizing expenses. I'm not that kind of person. Or maybe I am now a little, but I didn't used to be. Hey, you don't need to be greedy with me. But anyway, why aren't your tools fit for mass production? Just because they're smaller? Asked Benno, so I tried thinking of the simplest explanation. The smaller the tools get, the less efficient they are. For example, we're using a cicada that makes one contract-sized piece of paper, but an adult will be able to use a larger cicada. It would just be waste of time to make one piece of paper at a time when you could be using larger tools and making 4 pieces of paper in the same time frame. Yeah, it sounds like using the same tools as you would be a waste. Also, let's never just using a tub, but you'll want something called a sukibune to hold more water. And we're using chopsticks lips made in place of a rake, but I can't recommend that you do the same. These sure are a lot of tools I don't recognize. Naturally, since I hadn't ordered any of them, Let's tapped his temples while glaring at me. But no matter how much he glared, I couldn't hand over my current tools. I think it'd be hard for you to understand what our tools are and how we're using makeshift tools to compensate for what we don't have unless I physically show you what we're doing while explaining. Alright, I can make time tomorrow. I'll come watch. This will be a good opportunity since I've never seen what you two have done with that place. He settled on that instantly, but I hurriedly tried to remember what part of the paper-making process we were in. The thing is, we just finished making the paper today. Tomorrow, we're just drawing the paper and don't have anything in particular to do, so I was planning to go to the forest to get more materials. Oh, so in other words, you're starting with step 1. Yeah, so it actually is perfect, considering he has to know how to make it, so starting with step 1 is probably your best bet. That's right, we're going to chop wood, steam it, and peel the bark off. Then we dry it in our workshop. Can y'all now just leave me alone, please? Maybe I can get more recorded today. Alright, I'll send Mark with you, he said as I tried visualizing Mark going with us to the forest. Mr. Mark, chopping wood and peeling bark in the river? That doesn't suit him at all. Rejected. Mr. Mark is a gentleman, too pure for rugged nature. He wouldn't look right at all cutting wood and peeling bark, but you would be fine working with us, Mr. Benno. What's that supposed to mean? Girl, what are you saying? You're the one who wants to know what we're doing, so I think you should come with us. That's not what you just said. Benno frowned, but still, since he did want to see the whole paper-making process for himself, he decided to go with us. Before I knew it, we had agreed to go to the forest and work together tomorrow. The next day, when Lutz went to the storage building get the storage building key from the store, he found Benno there waiting in a work outfit. Well, Benno wasn't always, more closer to nobility than you guys are. He was, I'm assuming, a commoner, so I'm assuming this is not too bad for him. Lutz stealthily told me that Mark came out to say goodbye and was very worried that Benno would go on a rampage or something of the sorts. Surprised you two can work in a cramped place like this, said Benno after entering the mine workshop and looking around. He was used to working in a large store with plenty of space, so a storage building just barely big enough for 2 kids to walk around must have seemed tiny to him. Well, yeah. It's fine when it's just us, but it does feel cramped when you're in here too. Well, we do most of our work outside, so that's not a big deal. As usual, we prepared the tools we needed to harvest raw material and whatnot before heading to the forest. We had a pot, the steamer, a bucket, and some firewood. This time, my basket had nothing but the chopsticks, a board to use as a plate, potatoes, and butter. Benno offered to carry some of Lutz's stuff, but Lutz shook his head. I'm used to it, sir. It'd be a bigger help if you carried mine. You carry all this stuff each time, Lutz? That must be rough, said Benno, impressed as he picked me up, basket and all, and put me on his shoulder. Wow, on his shoulders, no less. Hold on tight. And at least give me that wooden frame thing. You look like you're about to get crushed. It's hard to watch. Benno took to walking. I bounced on his shoulder as he took wide strides forward. Shaking in fear, I clung to his head for dear life. We've settled on a pot this small so Lutz could carry it, but smaller pots means less wood steamed per trip. You should consider whether you want a much bigger pot or if you want to set up a bunch of tiny pots. A workshop near the river would be best so you don't have to carry the pots to it. We had an adult with us today, so we didn't have to leave with a group of pre-baptism kids like yesterday. We skipped by the meeting place and went straight directly to the south gate from the storage building. There we saw Dad and Otto talking about something. Hi, Dad, Otto. Be back soon. I waved at them as we passed, and they both looked at me with surprised eyes, then came jogging over. Dad narrowed his eyes at Benno. Mine? Who's this? It's Mr. Benno, the merchant who's been helping me a lot. This is my dad, Mr. Benno. Otto's shoulders trembled as I introduced my dad to Benno. What's wrong, Mr. Otto? Nothing, it's just Benno totally looks like he's your dad right now. Oh no, don't say that! You know how your dad gets! He got jealous of Otto. How do you think he's going to react to Mr. Benno? Shut it, Otto. I'm a bachelor. Benno dropped a fist of anger on Otto's head and resumed walking a little faster than before. Wow, Benno's single? That's surprising. He's kind of old, definitely close to 30. People married young here, and even my dad was 32 years old. It was odd that Benno was close to 30 and still hadn't married. Mr. Benno, are you not going to marry anyone? Yeah, probably not. Would you mind if I asked why? I'm just curious. You don't have to answer if you don't want to. Well, not like I'm keeping it a secret, replied Benno with a forced smile. When I wanted to get married, I had my hands full supporting my family. By the time my mother died and Karina was married, the girl I wanted to marry was dead and gone. There's not a girl in the world better than her, so I won't get married. It's that simple. He said it was simple, but it sounded like a heavy and complicated story to me. I slowly let it aside. Benno's reason involved a person close to him dying. I couldn't dig further or joke about it. I just silently patted his head, which made him force another smile. What's with you all of a sudden? Nothing really. I just thought a lot of people must be bothering you about marriage and successor since you run a large business. Yeah, pretty much. But things have calmed down a lot now. I'll train Karina's child to be my successor. That was my condition for letting those two marry. Oof, good luck, Otto. As I prayed from Otto, I think he's already gotten her pregnant by this point. We exited the dark tunnel, passing through the gate, and the paved road turned into a bumpy dirt road. The air became fresh, the landscape spread before my eyes, and overall I felt like a bird being set free from its cage. Been a while since I've gone to the forest. That reminds me, you mentioned going Peru gathering before. I thought that merchant children didn't go to the forest. He more than likely was a commoner. Frida was suggesting she only ever went there on picnics or something like that. I still hadn't forgotten the shock of her saying us going to the forest every day was like having a picnic every day. Benno let out a laugh and gave a nostalgic smile. It was back when I was an apprentice. I snuck out of my house on my days off, all secret-like. You snuck out? All the kids my age who came to the store as apprentices talked about going foraging to the forest. How could I not be interested? And aren't there still kids like that sneaking out? Now that you mention it, when apprentices come with us, there are some new faces now and then. Even baptized apprentices sometimes went out to the forest on their days off to gather or hunt. Unlike pre-baptism kids, they could go to the forest and back on their own, so many of them left without joining the group. Some apprentices brought their friends to the meeting place. That was how Benno had gone to the forest, it seemed. How do merchant kids pass the time? At my place, I basically just studied. Studying how to interact with customers, going to the market, looking at the prices, and calculating expenses, learning to tell who was from the city and who wasn't, judging the quality of the product from good to bad. His entire lifestyle had been built around trade and business, so I couldn't understand it from a brief explanation. All I knew was that his childhood had been entirely different from ours. That's pretty different from how we live. I'm guessing the children of smaller stores had different lives, too. We carried everything to the riverbed. Let's check the hearth, then place the pot on top of it. He drew water from the river and poured it into the pot, then set the steamer on top. Today I was throwing in some potatoes, too. Potatoes. I'm gonna go cut some wood. Benno, maybe you can look. If you're gonna be my apprentice, call me Master Benno. Also, keep yourself clean, using rinse sham or whatever. Don't come into my store dirty. Alright, what are you going to do, Mr. Benno? Wait here with mine or come chop wood with me? I want to see what kind of wood you gather, so I'll go with you. Les and Benno went looking for wood, so I gathered up sticks near the pot to add to the fire, and waited. Soon they returned with arms full of branches. Benno raised an eyebrow at the sight of me just sitting next to the pot. You're not going to do anything, mine? What do you think I can do, Mr. Benno? My job is to sit here and rest. If I collapse here, there won't be anyone who can carry me all the way back. I had been told to do the bare minimum of movement when Lutz wasn't around. Me acting solo caused more problems than not most of the time. Let's, you're surprisingly patient with her. That's right, Let's is amazing. Quit it, mine. I'm gonna go gather more wood. Embarrassed, Let's glared at me and fled the area. Yeah, you embarrassed him. Because you heaped him on with praise. After we watched him go with smiles on our faces, I took out my knife. I separated the wood they got into Vollrim wood and firewood, then chopped up the Vollrim wood to fit in the steamer while talking to Benno about Let's. I'm telling you, Let's really is amazing. I wouldn't have survived this long without him. He saved me the first time the devouring almost got me. And he even looked after me before all this stuff ended up being worth money. He's been making things with me for a while. Yeah, so I've heard. Is that why you're backing him up? For both the winter handiwork and papermaking? I could have monopolized all the profits for myself. Benno, as a merchant, couldn't understand why I was splitting the rights and profits with Let's. Let's help me out, so I want to help him out too, however I can. All I can do is think up new products, and that's just turning into money because you buy them from us. I see. Looks like I really got to make sure Let's joins my store. Thank you. Benno put a hand on my head. That felt like a subtle way for him to say to trust him, which was relieving. Let's came back once I was finished chopping the Vollrim wood into equal-length parts. I added water to the pot and took the potatofuls out of the steamer while putting the Vollrim wood inside. I need butter right now. I know. Let's put butter in the potatofuls. Benno looked at the potatofuls lined up on the board as we were using as a plate and frowned, just like Let's had. Mr. Benno, mine's cooking tastes great, even buttered potatoes or something else. Let's grinned and bit into a potatoful, so Benno shrugged and grabbed one himself. Not bad. The steaming packs them full of flavor, and they taste even better when you eat them hot while you're waiting outside in the cold weather. Benno was taking a look at the pot while after eating the potatoful, so Let's and I went foraging. We found some herbs and wild vegetables. Lately, it was much more rare for me to pick poison food. Thanks for looking up. Once the wood was steamed, we dunked them in the water and started peeling the bark. Benno helped with the bark peeling, but since he wasn't used to working with his hands, he was surprisingly inept, and the bark ended up all crumbled. At this rate, his help would make us run out of our blackguard bark. Mr. Benno, that's enough bark peeling. Could you please help Let's clean up? Once I finished peeling the black bark, we returned to the workshop and we set it up to dry. Benno scrunched his nose as he helped us put the bark on the nails to dry. Unlike us, he was tall and didn't need to use the stool to reach the shelves. I was jealous. The bark won't dry like this if there's too much. You're normally supposed to dry them on drying racks like this. I drew examples on my stone slate to explain what tools we lacked. Benno nodded, asked questions, and examined our tools. We let the black bark dry until it's all crackly. If you don't dry it properly, mold will start growing. Then we dunk the dried bark in the river. We leave it there for a whole day. Sounds easy to steal. It would be. That's my biggest concern with it. As long as you know how to make paper, the bark is a good source of money. That's another reason why I think the workshop would be best located by the river. I explained while tapping the bag of ashes in the corner of the storage building. We peel off the black part of the bark after dunking it in the river, then boil it with ashes, then dunk it in the river again for another full day. Boiling it with ashes softens the fibers. Oh, heh. After that, we pick off all the dirt and broken fibers in the wood and beat it with this wooden club thing until it gets all fluffy. We also brought this one to match Letz's size, so an adult would use a larger and heavier one to be more efficient. I pointed at the stand and the square lumber used as a club. Benno picked it up and swung it around experimentally. Yeah, you'd probably want a heavier one to crush stuff. Then you take the fluffy fibers and mix them with a sticky substance called tororo and water to make pulp water. Right now, we're using a tub with this cicada, but an adult will want a bigger cicada and a bigger tub called a tsukibune to make more pieces of paper at once. Right now, we can mix the pulpy water around using the chopsticks Let's made for me, but with a larger tub, you'll want basically a large rake or a comb to mix it all together. I drew examples on my slate as I explained, and Benno stroked his chin, nodding. Then we shake and angle the cicada to get paper of equal thickness and size. Once that's done, we pile them into the draining bed. They dry naturally like you can see over there. Tomorrow we'll put a weighted stone on them to dry them further. That gets rid of the sticky tororo. Once that's done, we'll stick each individual paper on that board and dry them in the sun. Then we peel the dry paper off the board, and that's that. I finished explaining the process, and Benno let out an impressed sigh. Gotta say, this is more complicated and time-consuming than I expected. Since you can do other work while the paper's drying, it doesn't feel like it takes that much time, and you'll be busier than us since you'll be mass-producing it. Also, it's really hard to go into the river this season. Benno, who had gone into the river to help get water in the bucket, nodded firmly. This is going to be one workshop that closes during the winter. The river froze during the winter, and wood became too hard to be used for paper making. You can't make paper without a river, so think carefully about where you want to set up the workshop. Yeah, I got it. Seems like things are going to get busy for me. Despite talking about being busy, Benno looked more than excited. I smiled and wished him good luck. At the time, I was thinking that would be all Benno's problem, but in reality, it was Les and I who ended up busy after Benno used his newfound knowledge to stake out a workshop. Mark visited us while we were making paper to accompany us to craftsmen all over so we could give them details on the tools. We had no choice but to follow after he mentioned that the information fee included our help here. By the time the tools were made, the people were gathered. Benno had the process down pat and the workshop was more or less ready. Spring had started turning into summer. Okay, I think I'm going to have to end this here. I hope you guys enjoyed it, and I'll see you guys next time.